What's up, guys? This is Shay.
And this is Matt.
And this is the Building Small Business Podcast. Today we're here with Derek DeFranco. Got it right the first time?
You got it.
Heck yeah. From Twin Brewing. We obviously said the name of the business, but I'll let him talk a little bit about what he does each and every day here.
So I am considered the owner head brewer. So my responsibilities include coming up with the recipes, making the beer on a day-to-day basis, making sure the tanks are cleaned properly, making sure all our kegs are cleaned, inventory control, making sure we have enough clean kegs for each beer, making sure we have all of our ingredients, grain, hops, yeast, planning out our schedule to make sure that the beers that we have on tap, our flagships always stay on, which I think is probably the most difficult part just because it's so much logistics. And also just doing the back end stuff, taxes, which is my favorite part.
Is there anything you don't do?
So I don't manage the day-to-day taproom stuff in regards to the employees. I have a really good general manager who does all that stuff. And I learned pretty early on that you can only take on so much, and the more you take on, the less you can focus on the important things. And for me, I thought my focus was best on the product because that's really what the brewery is all about. And so I hired some really good people to take on the tasks that really just needed to be done by someone else. Day-to-day scheduling, it's really a full-time job. I just don't have time for it when it comes to, the bartending schedule. So, and then I have some really good assistant brewers because as we've grown, my focus has shifted on, brewing day in and day out to more of the back-end business side of things. So, and planning for expansion because we've actually grown at such an exponential rate that it seems like every year and a half we have to start looking at getting more tanks, even moving the operations. So
I was about to say, you're probably about to run out of room, aren't you?
we are completely out of room. So.
I was at your all's grand opening when you all had it, and it still blows my mind when I come in here to see you all have already expanded into this building we're sitting in now. It's awesome over here.
I will never forget that day. So it was Friday. We were literally waiting on our certificate of occupancy to open. And I was so terrified because we felt like we had everything in check. But, sometimes the city comes in and they're like, oh, yeah, you don't have this done and it has to be done before you open. Luckily, we got our CO and we opened, and it was complete insanity.
There was a lot of people here.
So the Friday was great. The next day, we inventoried our glasses, and we started with 200 and something glasses. And the next day, the Saturday, we had just over 100.
Oh, people just jacked them.
Yeah.
They thought it was like...
Which, it doesn't really bother me because they don't really cost a whole lot. But the problem was we didn't have a lot of space to store things. And so that particular day, we only had 100 glasses. And that sounds like a lot until you get a ton of people in here and you can't clean glasses fast enough. So we were running out of glasses. So we were either like, we're going to make people wait on glassware, or we're going to go out and get some plastic cups. So that's what we did. We bought a bunch of Solo cups. And I remember standing out in the parking lot, seeing all these people standing around with Solo cups. And I remember thinking, I think we just threw a fraternity party.
Yeah. This is very professional.
And my memory isn't perfect. I don't remember anyone playing Flippy Cup, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did happen.
That'd be hilarious.
Oh, if I was there, I would have been dominating.
I'm dominating. Wow.
I'm good at Flippy Cup. My beer pong skills have completely
Decreased.
diminished.
Yeah. It happens. Don't feel bad. I'm also not as good as I once was. And that was my second thought about a Toby Keith song so far on this podcast. That's 2. That's the first time ever, I can say.
All right.
So this grand opening happened when?
So it was September 30th of 2016.
16.
So we're actually a month and a half, 2 months away from celebrating our 5-year anniversary.
I was just getting ready to say, I think I talked to you briefly about this a couple weeks ago, and you were like, hey, our 5 years coming up. And I was like, oh.
Are y'all going to do anything?
oh, we're going ham.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
I feel like it's when, as people get older, it just becomes a right to be able to celebrate your birthday longer.
Yeah.
You know, so you're like
Earth month.
25, 21, like all you care about is surviving.
Yeah.
Right? 21
How many shots am I going to have to
uh,
take? Yeah.
Then you turn 25 and it's like, all right, I get a whole weekend to celebrate my birthday. And each preceding year, you're like, oh, I get like 2 weeks, and then it's a month, and then
Yeah.
you're like, 6 months, right?
Yeah. Fair enough.
At least that's an excuse to be drunk every day for 6 months.
I like it.
Good enough as any.
Do you guys have any thing that people should know about this 5-year? Like, is there something that you kind of want to promote?
So every year we do something pretty special. This year, obviously, after going through the pandemic, it was, and I guess it's still not over, and hopefully we don't have too many more restrictions put on us, but we definitely have a really fun week planned of events and releases. So Monday, so the 30th is a Thursday. So that Monday, which I believe is the 27th, we're going to do a Mirror Monday tap takeover. So we're going to take, there's going to be 10 different ones. We're going to take 5 of kind of fan favorites and make 5 brand new ones. And that's always a big event. You know, people like trying the new stuff. And with the Mirror Mondays, we get to go pretty crazy with them because they're small batches. We only do a keg each. So that helps a lot to be able to kind of, you know, do crazier things like candy bars and stuff like that. When you scale that stuff up, it's just a lot more difficult.
It's a lot of candy bars.
It's a lot of unwrapping.
Yeah.
And
Could you tell us a little bit more for the folks that don't know about Mirror Monday, Mirror Twin Monday, whatever? What do we do on those days? You said it's a small batch thing. Like, I'm assuming it's experimental.
yeah. So I guess the idea came from an extension of, you know, the brewery name itself. So the brewery is called Mirror Twin because I have an identical twin brother, but I'm right-handed and he's left-handed. I'm also better looking than he is. So,
Oh, okay.
and so we're the mirror image of each other. So we took that idea and we kind of created this idea of what we call the twin draft system. And what it is where we take pretty much identical beers, but we change one aspect of it, whether it's the hops we use or the yeast we use to ferment, even some of the malt. And it's an interesting creation because it allows people to see that just one tweak in a recipe can completely change the outcome of the product. An example of a flagship for this is our Citronomical and Mose Def. They're the exact same recipes. The only thing we change is we use Citra hops in one and Mosaic hops in the other. And just that one change makes the beer completely different.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there are people who prefer one and there are people who prefer the other, which is kind of what we were hoping for. So that kind of stemmed into the Mirror Mondays, which is where we take a beer that's already packaged and we do something crazy with it, like add cereal or candy bars or Jelly Ranchers. So we do that release every Monday. And it allows us to have fun as brewers, and also it gives people kind of a new, Mondays are generally a little bit slower days of the week. People are recovering from the weekend. It kind of gives people a reason to say, hey, like there's something new, let's go to Mirror Twin and try it. So we do those in small batches for the basic reason of being able to do, crazy stuff. It allows us to have a little bit more fun. So that Mirror Monday takeover that we're going to do that Monday of that week, the 27th, 9/27, is going to do 10 of those beers that are, kind of crazy and outlandish.
Yeah. I look forward to them every Monday. Your all's marketing is so cool for them. Like the pictures you do and everything, those are on point.
That's definitely something we've learned as we've grown is the importance of marketing and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, that definitely does it. So how did you even get started? How did you start the brewery? Have you always been into beer, or how did you get to this point now? Because like you said, you've grown this at a massive scale. What led you to this point?
I've always been what I would call a craft beer drinker. Even when I was, 21, I was bringing things like Blue Moon and brown ales to fraternity parties, and everyone's like, why don't you just drink Natty Light? I'm like, because it doesn't taste good, and I can drink 6 of these and be just as drunk as you are, drinking
12.
Yeah, so
efficiency.
But
Right.
to me, it was more about taste. So then I moved here about 9 years ago, and I moved into this house. My next door neighbor I thought he was frying a turkey, to be completely honest with you. And I go up to him, and I was like, oh, this is a good opportunity for me to introduce myself to our new neighbor. So I walk up to him, and I introduce myself, and I say, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm brewing beer. And I was like, that sounds really cool. Do you mind if I kind of hang out and watch? He ended up getting me one of the beers that he made, and the long story short of it is I started brewing on my own in my garage, and that's how I got into brewing. And it just became a passion for me, and it became this journey of trying to make the best beer I could, just for me, and I started watching a lot of YouTube videos, going down the rabbit hole of forums, and I started brewing a lot, and I brewed once or twice a week for about 2 years. And I was in this homebrew club, and I was meeting guys who had been brewing for 20 years, and after a year I had brewed more batches than they had, just because
wow.
I went so...
You were excited about it.
And I loved the process. I loved having the finished product. The downside was we had to drink beer so much.
Got to get rid of it somehow.
So then I started giving it away to a lot of people because, hey, like, can I get you a growler of this? And not many people refuse free beer. So I started giving it a lot away, and I started, getting feedback, and people were like, man, this is just as good as anything I've had, off the store shelf. Have you ever thought about opening up a brewery? So I was like, what? My background is, I went to law school. I passed the bar here in Kentucky, and I was like, that sounds like so much more fun
Yes.
than practicing law. So I started writing a business plan, and it took me about a year and a half. And, a credit I want to give is to the other breweries in town, because I had no idea where to start. When I was in law school, we had a class where, the goal was, hey, if you want to open up your own law firm, it kind of taught you, like, the steps you have to take and, how to write a business plan. I knew how to write a business plan. I just didn't know where to get the information that you needed to have the data to be able to find, investment capital. So I, went to a lot of the other breweries and was like, hey, like, can you give me what's a reasonable gas bill to plug in? I mean, obviously rent was going to be kind of depending on where you go and how much space you rent, but an average idea of rent. And honestly, the big one was, how much beer can we expect to go through? I know the pricing, but without that information, it's hard for me to be able to figure out how much revenue we're going to bring in and whether or not we can figure out if it's going to be profitable. And also what your break-even point is. How much beer do you have to sell in order to break even? So all the breweries were just very helpful. I think we all have this idea that, we're better off together, we're stronger together, and, the more people that we can convert to craft beer drinkers, the better off we all are. So I got the business plan finalized, and I started looking for investors. My first conversation was with my best friend from college, and it was actually at my bachelor party, and I was just like, hey, you should invest in a brewery. And bachelor party, right? We're out there to have fun. He's like, oh yeah, sure. And then he was in my wedding, and I brought some of my homebrew, and he was like, you made this? And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, I'll invest. And then my other investor I met through a mutual friend, and he was looking to invest in something like a brewery or a bar. And I sat down with him, and we went through my business plan. He had some suggestions for some tweaks, mostly the initial startup cost. He wanted me to reduce it. So I went back to the drawing board, and in 48 hours, I had completely redone the business plan with I cut about 60% of our initial cost out. And, that just meant starting with smaller equipment and kind of foregoing some things that, I felt were luxuries at the time. And, we had the money together. We started looking at places. We found this location. We absolutely loved it. There was a little hiccup. The way it was zoned, we had to have food. And so
they made you have food?
Yeah. And at first it kind of felt like a punch in the gut because I didn't want to run a restaurant. I wanted to run a brewery. But it led to probably the best decision we ever made, which was partnering with Rolling Oven. And it's just been such a great partnership because we each get to focus on what we're really good at, and we don't have to deal with the headaches of each other's business, right? You guys, do what you're good at, we do what we're good at, and we stick to it. And, also the inherent value of having food is people stay longer. Some people will just come for the food and go, hey, you know what? Might as well have a beer while I'm here. Mm-hmm. It gives us a lunch crowd, which I think we wouldn't have otherwise. And Nick, the owner of Rolling Oven, and I we get along so well. In 5 years, we've never even raised our voice at each other. We just get along. We understand. We understand that. I'm not saying that there hasn't been some frustrations, because as the business grows and as the environment changes, there's certainly been some things that have come up where we each needed to work on something, but we talk about it in we discuss it and figure out how to solve the problem without having to scream and yell at each other.
So you mentioned you got started homebrewing in your garage. Were you making similar type beers to what you're selling now? Like with those crazy flavors? Like were you throwing a Snickers bar in a beer back then? Or is that just something you had to start doing once you had the better equipment?
So I did a little bit of both. A lot of the recipes that are on tap right now were recipes that I created as a home brewer.
That's awesome.
And they've evolved over time, but I also enjoyed the crazy stuff. Like the cereal tap takeover that we do every March.
That's my favorite.
Was so it started off when I was a home brewer because I was making this brown ale that I really liked. That was one of my favorite styles. And Shotgun Wedding was kind of like, oh, you can make a beer with vanilla. I wonder if you can make a beer taste like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And so I went through about 3 different batches, and all of them were good, but it just took me a couple batches to really dial it in. And by the 3rd batch, it was like, holy cow, this just tastes like the milk that you drink after eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And so that's kind of where that idea came from. And then it just was a natural progression to say, well, let's pair other beers that we have with other cereals. And it just, that idea of being able to say, okay, well, let's make this beer taste like something that's not really associated with beer. That's kind of where that rabbit hole came from. And we've just gone down it.
Heck yeah. Well, you mentioned something earlier about advertising briefly. You had a huge grand opening we kind of talked about. What do you think has been your the thing that's gotten you the most eyes on your business as far as advertising goes?
So I think one of the things we learned was you don't necessarily want to tell people like, hey, come try this beer. I think, really great marketing makes people think, I have to go try that. And so one facet of that was those, Mirror Monday photos and the photos that just make the beer look like, oh my gosh, like that just sounds absolutely delicious. I've got to go try that. So just using imagery to promote the product. So I think that's up there. I think the most important thing was canning, because, and full disclosure, I was so against canning when we opened, because it was just like, well, why do I want to sell my product for less? And not to mention, you sell it for less, but also there's a lot more cost. The can, the lid, the label, the,
Man
when we
hours
first
to can it.
Yeah. But then you start to see the inherent value of it. And what it allowed us to do was kind of tell the story of who we were and, what things we kind of valued through our can art. And I think that really helped develop the brand that people know as Mirror Twin.
Well, the cans also allow people to share it with like friends easier. So I'll have some in my fridge at the house, and somebody comes over and they're like, "What's this slushy thing?" And I'll hand it to them. They're like, "That's awesome." And the next thing I know, they come with me next time we're up here, and you've got a new customer from the can, pretty much.
Yeah, and another thing that I see happen all the time is people will either come in, go straight to the cooler, grab a couple 4-packs, check out and leave, which is great because, that's a sale you wouldn't have without cans. Or people come in, maybe it's their first time, or maybe, it's their first time being here since we really started canning a lot. They have their red-blooded American, they see that it's in the cooler, and they go take a 4-pack and take it home. And that's, an increased, sale. And so it increases your, sale per person amount, and it's just really helped sales. So not only is it great for marketing in the sense that you can tell people who you are through your branding of your labels, and also, like you said, someone sees it in a fridge, they grab it out of your fridge and they say, "Oh, who's Mirror Twin?" It starts that conversation. But it also increases sales in the sense that people come in and they either take the cans to go because maybe they're going to the lake that weekend, or they add it on to their sale because I love Red Blood American. I'm here. I'm gonna take a 4-pack. So canning has been, even though it's a pain in the butt, but we still, I think it's a great thing. And also it allows us to always come up with kind of new stuff. And so that's why the pandemic was really hard, but there were some good things that's come out of it. And one of those things, we decided to buy our own canning line because we were using a mobile canning company forever, and they did a great job. It's just the logistical scheduling was getting very difficult, and it really wasn't advantageous for us to bring them in more than once a month because they had a minimum. So if you didn't can so much beer, it was extra.
Right.
And it just didn't make sense financially. So buying our own canning line allowed us to say, okay, well, hey, we're just going to can 30 cases of this. You would never do that with a mobile canning company. So, that's one of the things that really was a good thing that came out of the pandemic was, getting our own line. So now we do these every Friday. We have a new can release. And I think, we love doing it because it allows us to brew fun new things. But also, it, gives people a reason to keep on coming in every weekend, outside of just, because you can do okay just kind of resting on your laurels and just making the best beer you can, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think if you really want to keep people coming in the door, you keep on releasing that new stuff that people haven't tried, and it makes them go, I've got to go try that. And so that's where I think you can really use can releases as an advantage because, it's like, oh man, there's a new thing coming out every Friday at Mirror Twin. I got to go there and try it. So, and it's just, you see it on social media where, you see people posting on your cans, and it puts a smile on my face every time to, go through my Facebook feed or Instagram and see someone post a picture of, our can. I'll never get sick of seeing that happen.
I bet that's pretty cool. Speaking of the cans and the can art, how do you determine what goes on the can that you keep talking about that image and what you enjoy about it, do you guys have like inside jokes, or is it just something that you kind of think about as you're creating the beer? Like, how does that go?
It's a lot of inside jokes.
I figured.
I like that better than like some other strategic way.
There's no strategic way. A lot of times we're just making fun of each other or referencing a TV show that we like and saying, oh man, that'd be a hilarious name. And then, we sit down and we think, okay, well, how do we want that to translate into the can art? And we have a really great graphic designer. His name is Nate Blankenship, and he just does a phenomenal job. He just has this crazy ability to take the madness that's in my head and translate it into this beautiful tapestry of artwork.
Is he local?
Yeah. So
That's nice.
he used to.
Do you take full credit for every can art?
No.
Damn it.
No.
I was hoping you'd be like, yeah, that's me. All mine.
So Nate used to be on our payroll. He used to be an employee, but he ended up getting a really great job offer with Big Ass Fans. And so now he just kind of freelances our stuff. And he does a great job. And it's just his ability to create what he creates. I don't know how he does it.
So you mentioned you went to law school past the bar. Did you practice law before you started the business?
I practiced law under a very specific license while I was in law school, but by the time I moved here, this got started so fast that I never really practiced law kind of on my own.
Yeah.
Because it was called a 7-Eleven license and allowed you to practice under the supervision of an attorney. So I probably did, 20, 25 trials while I was doing my externships. But, by the time this happened, the desire to practice law diminished significantly.
Was this your first business?
Yes.
This is only slightly cooler than law, by the way.
When I was 18, I had a speaker company. It failed miserably.
What do you mean by that? Like the actual, you were making the speaker? What was?
It was called DDM Audio. And also, if you count all the lawn mowing companies I had when I was 14 years old. But my siblings would probably tell you I ran a sweatshop in my room making those hemp necklaces.
There you go.
It's basically Matt making me edit these podcasts.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically what I did was I created an LLC. It was actually a sole proprietorship, and I started accounts with these wholesaling companies that sold like subwoofers and speakers and head units, and I purchased like $1,500 worth of inventory, and then I used to do car installs for Best Buy, and so I would sell people the speakers and then install it. But it was mostly for me to put cool new stuff in my car, and so it didn't work out great. You're not supposed to, use your own products.
Yeah.
Right?
Not like that.
Yeah.
It's okay to have a beer now and then, but filling your car with the coolest speakers isn't smart.
That was a 18-year-old stupid entrepreneurial decision. But I would say that this was my first company.
Yeah. But
So
you probably learned a lot through that, I'd imagine.
I learned a lot of what not to do.
Not to do, yeah, exactly.
So what's been your favorite thing about owning your own business? And you mentioned you worked a little bit as an attorney under someone. Now that you've seen the other side of not being an employee, what's your favorite thing about owning the business?
I love being my own boss. I love, kind of standing around and watching people enjoy something that we created from kind of nothing. So, being able to make your own schedule, not having a boss. I mean, no one really tells me what to do. It's you know what has to get done, and you do it anyway. And so to be a business owner, you have to be really highly self-motivated, because if the things don't get done, I mean, you can get, fees from tax. If it's a tax thing, it can be, a product doesn't get put into kegs or cans when it needs to, and then you run out of it. It can be you advertise for a can release, and then that can release doesn't happen because you procrastinated on something. So you definitely have to be self-motivated, but I love, it's stressful, but I love having the responsibility of being able to kind of own everything where, it's got to get done. And if it doesn't get done, it's not that my boss is going to yell at me. It's that something that needs to happen won't happen. And then also, just like I said, watching people, enjoy the product, watching people gather around it. And the one thing I've always loved about beer is how it brings people together. People conversate around it. People, have good times around it. There's nothing like it. And
I don't know if you can see it from.
Oh,
where
you'll
you're
be
at,
able
but
to see it on that
This
one.
fly is absolutely pestering the hell out of Derek's face. It's not fun.
I try to swipe left on this fly.
Right. I guess to kind of go into other things as far as entrepreneurship goes, what's something you would tell an entrepreneur that's looking to start a business? Like,
so I think no matter what you do, right, you think you're going to focus on the task itself, whether it's being a brewer, like, I'm going to get to brew beer, or, a t-shirt company, like, I love making t-shirts. This is what I get to do every day. It's so much more than that, because you're HR, you're the payroll company, you're the janitor. So my advice would be willing to work extremely hard, because as great as it is being your own boss, there also is, the buck stops with you. And if something doesn't get done, there's no one to blame it on other than yourself. And, another thing too is the way you deal with your employees. I mean, you can't just yell at them for everything. Sometimes it's your fault. And so just knowing that going into it, it's going to be a lot more than just you being able to take your passion and turn it into a business. There's so much that goes into it. And I knew that going into it, which I think helped. But it's kind of like when you do a build out and you do a budget for it. I don't care how many I's you dot or T's you cross, you are still going over budget. It's kind of like that. It doesn't matter how much you think you go into it prepared. There's always that thing that happens where you're like, I never thought this is what I was going to have to do. So just going into that spirit of entrepreneurship with also the understanding that you do everything. So, but at the same time, that's also what makes it a fun journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many employees do you have now?
We have 13.
That's awesome.
So we have 5 salaried employees, and then 8 bartenders. So
were you always good at hiring employees?
We just got super lucky, I guess. Maybe not having a background in it. The other managerial position I had was I was an assistant manager at a sushi restaurant, but I didn't really have much to do with the hiring. Maybe my lack of experience in that made me better, because I didn't really know what to ask. For me, what I was looking for was that someone had, certain, obviously, traits, but also like a passion for it. I think no matter what, if someone has a passion for something, that's going to translate way more than someone's previous experience in it. And so that's one thing I really look for, especially in my brewers, because everyone thinks that brewing is a super glamorous job. And I'm not saying it's not fun and we get to joke around and have a good time, but it's also a lot of work. When you're in that, in the back of the brewery, when it's 95 degrees, it's 115 in the brewery.
Yeah.
And you've got all these, we're constantly getting sprayed with, yeast debris and getting, hot water on us and chemicals. It's a lot more. We have to deal with a lot more crap than people realize.
He's looking at me because I always talk about wanting to start my own brewery, and he was like, "You have no idea what you're going to try to get yourself into."
Every single time that we talk about starting a business, he's like, "Let's do a brewery," and I'm like, "No, you don't understand."
I will say every
I'll
single
support
time I
you,
drive
but
by
I'm
here,
not doing that shit.
every time I drive by here, y'all are working your ass off in that room back there, and I'm like, man, they got to be hot.
Yeah.
Like
It's
that's
so
all I
hot.
can think about is how hot it is.
Yeah. So, so I really looked for, does this person have the passion for this? Because if you're just wanting this job because you think it's super glamorous, it's not going to take long for you to go, I hate this, I'm done. If you have the passion for it though, and you love taking, this raw material and turning it into this final product that people love to enjoy, and getting to see people enjoy it, which one of the things I was really important to me was giving my brewers autonomy and letting them create their own recipes and run an entire brew by themselves. So when they look around and they see people enjoying the beer, they can say they're enjoying my beer. It's theirs just as much as it is mine. And so that passion and giving them that understanding that this is just as much their product as it is mine. I've had my brewers, one of my brewers has been with me since the very day we opened. The other brewer he started bartending with us and then started brewing too. And then I just hired another brewer in June, and I can already tell, so every year we do, for our anniversary, we make this beer called Chernobyl. And which, let me explain that. It's not Chernobyl. Right,
That's what I always thought it was.
Same.
So Chernobyl is the Russian energy drink that they spill on the hot tub in Hot Tub Time Machine.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, wow.
One of my favorite movies, and I
Yeah.
can't believe I.
And it's kind of a double entendre because it was a Russian energy drink, and the beer is a Russian Imperial Stout.
Nice.
And they time travel, and we always used to joke that it was so high ABV that it would make people time travel.
Yeah.
And so that's why we called it Chernobyl.
That's awesome.
So we have the base, and then each brewer gets to pick their variant. And as long as it's feasible, they can pick whatever they want. So 2 years ago, when we started doing that in bottles, we had my graphic designer thought it would be cool to put each brewer on the label, and then we kind of GTA cartooned it. So
That's
it has
awesome.
that feature. So I hired him in June. His name's Eric. And when I told him that he was going to get his own bottle, I've never seen someone so happy. And, that's what I love to see. I love, giving them that feeling that, hey, this is just as much my product as it is, anyone else's. And I think that also helps feed that passion. Because if you don't, then it's like, well, I'm just pulling levers, I'm just
Yeah.
going through the motions. Whereas you give them that autonomy, and all of a sudden it's theirs. It's more than just pulling levers. There's a reason, to do why they're doing what they're doing. It's not just I'm gonna go in and get a paycheck.
So obviously, something like bourbon takes several years to make. What's the time frame, start to finish, of a beer?
It depends on the style. Ales ferment out a lot faster, so their turnaround time is about 2 to 3 weeks. Lagers ferment a little bit slower because they're fermented at a cooler temperature, so they take about 6 to 8 weeks. If we barrel age something, that can take anywhere between 3 to 6 months. Sometimes we'll
Dang.
age something for a year.
Like sours?
Sours, there's a couple different processes. One of the processes, we can sour beer relatively quickly, just in a couple days. But if you want some complexity, those do take about 6 months to a year to really develop. And we kind of feed those, we call them post fermentation sours, where we inoculate the beer after it's already been fermented by a clean yeast, and we let those bacteria strains develop the complexity of flavor. And sometimes, I think to make really good sours that way, it's a lot of, blending, and that requires a really good palate. And also it's kind of knowing what you're looking for to say, okay, well, this there's several different ways to do it, but right now we're using, old wine barrels and pulling a flavor and saying, okay, well, this barrel has a little bit more of this characteristic that I like. This barrel doesn't have enough. I either need to re-inoculate it with more bacteria, or sometimes we'll use wild yeast strains. Or if I blend these two together, they'll give me exactly what I'm looking for. So
I have a question.
Sure.
For those of us who don't know what the word inoculate means, what does that mean?
It means to basically just add the bacteria to the liquid. It's just a fancy word for just we introduce the bacteria to the liquid, and then the liquid or the bacteria starts to do what it's just genetically programmed to do, which is to reproduce, consume the energy source, which in this case is sugars, and then make byproducts, which is generally with most bacteria, it's an acidic nature. So like Acetobacter produces acetic acid. Other bacteria produce lactic acid, which gives like a good clean sour. And different forms of bacteria will create different acids and also different amounts of those acids, and that's why it's important to use certain bacteria strains to get exactly what you're looking for.
So when you're doing like these Mirror Monday beers, like cereal beers and stuff like that, is that, I guess that's added in after it's already went through the whole fermenting process and everything?
Yeah.
And so do you just do that like in a day, drop a bunch of cereal in and then strain it out? How does that work?
So we have these
He's about to give away all his secrets.
Yeah, I would say never mind. I'm giving away a secret.
Yeah. So we have these kegs where the top of the kegs are removable with a tri-clamp fitting, so it's really easy to take on and off. I was talking about earlier how most kegs, the spear is really difficult to remove. These kegs are designed to be easy. So what we'll do is we'll take whatever product we're trying to flavor, and we'll take whatever we're trying to use to flavor. Let's just use Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So we'll use however many bags we found per keg to be effective in getting the flavor we want. We'll put them in these like strainer bags. We'll put them in the keg that has the easy opening, and then we'll rack the beer. We'll transfer the beer on top into that open keg. We'll let it sit for, it depends on what we're trying to, like how much flavor we're trying to get. It depends on, certain things, like fruit purees, for instance, take almost no time to create flavor. Whereas like the cereals, it's not instant. You have to let them sit for a little bit and kind of permeate throughout the liquid. We'll let those sit for anywhere between a week to a couple days, and we'll transfer them back into a normal keg to strain out all that other stuff, put it on tap.
Awesome.
That's wild. I would have never thought about all that goes into making something taste like cereal, but that's crazy.
Yeah, the least fun part is pulling those bags out of those kegs.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's
I got one more question based on the timeline thing that you mentioned. It takes 3 to 6 weeks to make an ale, or you said 3 weeks, but that seems like a lot of, you mentioned a few logistic issues that can arise, but how far out do you have to produce? You said you got your staples and you got the ones that you're running throughout the week. How far out do you have to plan for that? Like how far out are you right now from the next time?
We try to plan our brew schedule for about 2 months in advance.
Okay.
And so what we've done, it was really hard at first, which is why we kept on running out of beer, because we didn't have any data. And then as we grew and as we aged, we started, having the data that we could use and extrapolate into information we could use to plan our schedule. So now every quarter, every week, I track how many kegs we go through of each beer. And then every quarter we go back through that and we average out what we're going through every quarter. Because it changes, right? Like darker beers sell faster in the wintertime. They slow down a lot during the summertime. Lighter beers pick up a lot. Whereas, they kind of fall off in the wintertime when people want the darker, roastier, higher ABV beers. So we take that information and then we say, okay, we're going through about 18 kegs of, let's say, Wycra Wasted a month. And
That's my nickname for Matt.
yeah. So we go through this many kegs of that a month. If we brew it, this is how many kegs we get out of it. This is how long it takes for that beer to be produced. So this is how often we have to brew it in order to never run out. And also, you want to have inventory, because not only are we selling beer out of the tap room, but we also sell to our distributor, who then turns around and sells it to bars and restaurants. And so you also have to kind of predict, all right, well, how much are they taking as well, to make sure that that's the most difficult part, is the flagships and keeping those on tap. And then, okay, well, how often do I have to brew something new in order to always have something new coming out? And the Mirror Mondays are fine, but they don't last maybe a couple days. And so it's, okay, well, those are going to go on tap, and it's going to sell, however fast. But then also, well, here's a batch of something new. We made 15 barrels of it, which is about 30 kegs. How long is that going to stay on? And that's kind of how we plan our schedules. And then also, to further complicate it, when we started canning, that completely changed the numbers, because it's like, okay, now not only are we taking 5 barrels of this product and canning it, but also how fast is it going to sell in cans versus how fast it's going to sell on draft. So it took us a while to kind of find that balance, and sometimes we still don't find it.
Yeah, you can't get it right every time.
I bet it's tough. Are you ready to tell us what you've learned?
Well, I
you
had
have
one
any
more
other
question,
questions?
but then I forgot it.
Well, maybe you'll remember it during these
Yeah.
burning questions.
Yeah, you go first.
You sure?
Yeah.
You're positive?
I'm good.
Okay. I only say that because every time I say something, he's like, oh, I was going to say that. So I think it's something that wasn't necessarily said, but if I had a lesson that I've learned from this podcast, it would be there's a safe route and there's a passion route, however you want to phrase that. But you had a chance to go get a job, and you had already gone through school, and you had already – were you going to say that? But you had already done all the work that it took to become a lawyer and do the safe thing, and lawyers are needed in many ways. So you knew you'd have some sort of demand for a job, but you went the unsafe route and started making beer and followed your passion, and you hired people based on passion. Like it's you've talked about just sitting in the corner and watching people enjoy your product. Like, not a lot of people can sit back and say that that's what they like to do when they have a chance. When they're done with work, they like to go home and go sit on their ass. And you like to watch people drink your beer, and I think that's why you're successful, is you're truly passionate about it.
Kind of the same thing. I guess I'll double down on the passion part, because you couldn't be successful in something like this if you weren't. Like, if you did it strictly from a business standpoint, there's too many not fun variables, like getting yeast and hot water thrown on you, that's quickly going to drive you out of that. But when you're talking about how you got started brewing in your home and giving away free beer and stuff like that, one of my favorite breweries that's outside of Kentucky, New Belgium, when you go tour them, he kind of got started the same way. And I always thought his path to get to where he was really cool, because, he went all the way to Belgium to learn how to make better beer and stuff like that. And was giving away to his friends. So it's just cool seeing you all in the same industry, and you kind of have the same path to get here, just because you're so passionate about just beer.
Right.
So it's pretty cool.
I do have another question I forgot to ask earlier. It was the guy that you thought he was roasting a turkey. Does he know about all this? Does he come have a beer every now and then?
Oh, yeah. He gets free beer for life.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So,
I was wondering, as soon as you said that, I was like, does this dude even, he has to know this exists.
Yeah. So first off, I just want to say, I don't just sit in the corner and
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been here and seen him.
He's just creeping in the corner. No, I'm saying it means a lot to be able to watch someone that, if you made a restaurant and you finally got to not be the one dropping the plates off at the tables, if you came in and you just watched a bustling thing and you were the ones that came up with the recipe and the menu and everything else, you would look at it the same exact way. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's not like
no, I just wanted to make that joke.
Yeah, he's sitting up in the corner
I seen him dressed as a barrel one day sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
I just got up, moved.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying he was creeping on people. He just likes that people like his beer.
Well, yeah, you do it for a couple reasons, but one, you want to make sure that, if I'm sitting at the bar and everyone, the great part of craft is that every product's going to be a little bit different, and sometimes you had asked me earlier about kegs to kegs. Well, sometimes, especially with the New Englands, like some more debris will go into one keg than the other, and you'll watch a bartender pour the beer, and we try to do a great job of training them, like, hey, pour a little bit more out to get this debris out before you serve it. But sometimes it happens, and so one thing you're looking around is, okay, is everyone getting the product that they're supposed to be getting? But also, you just kind of look around and you're just watching people enjoy it, and thinking to yourself, okay, like, all right, well, we made a good product. You can tell if someone drinks a beer and they don't like it.
Yeah.
Right. They're
the face. Yeah.
So, but you can also tell when people enjoy it, and so you're watching for that to make sure that people are getting the product that they want. But in the process of that, you're watching people enjoy it, and that's just, it's kind of heartwarming, because whether you know it or not, and you don't really, you can't really fully comprehend it until it happens, but you're kind of putting your heart on your sleeve, because especially with the age of the internet, people go on there, 1 star, this beer tasted like crap, and you're like, oh, I worked really hard on that.
Yeah.
So you're kind of putting yourself out there, and so but you're looking to make sure that people are enjoying your product. One thing I'll have to say is, the one thing I've learned is you have to put your pride aside. You have to be able to admit, yeah, I didn't make the best beer here, and I need to learn from my mistakes. If you think you're always right, you're never going to be able to change and adapt your product. And so that's one thing I've definitely learned over the years, is you have to be able to take criticism, because if you don't learn how to do that, then I think you're going to be in a worse position to grow your business.
Have you had a beer that you've made and you released to the public that just completely flopped?
We still sold it all, but it haunts me. It was so.
Did you like it too?
No, it was disgusting.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, if you liked it and everybody else hated it, I'd be like,
I don't know.
It's annoying.
I don't know how we sold it all. The weirdest thing is when people come up and ask us, hey, are you ever going to brew that beer again? No.
You're like, it's the worst performing beer that I've had.
It was called Smokey the Sour Bear. At least we named it something funny. It was supposed to be a porter, a smoked porter, and it ended up getting contaminated. But it was a clean So contamination is kind of a, like, to outside people, to lay people that aren't in the business, that sounds really bad. It just means that a wort-spoiling bacteria got into the beer at some point and soured it. It's not like something that...
Like a beer that wasn't supposed to be sour got
right.
sour.
And so we were like, this is when we were on our 3-barrel system. It was like within our first year.
You had to release it.
Yeah, it's like, let's just try it. And it was horrible. I regret every moment of it.
I wish you had some so I could
people.
try it.
I'm so glad we're out of it. But
He's not even
but
gonna
we
play
still
along. He's
we
like, no,
still
fuck that.
we still get
It's
people
gone.
who are like, "Are you gonna remake that beer?" I don't even know if I could. But no. Like, one of the reviews, I think, was the best way to describe it. They were like, it tasted like hot dogs and Skittles. Does that sound good? But people drank it all.
Oh,
But yeah, so
that's so foul.
I regret it so much.
Hot dogs and Skittles.
Knowing what I know now,
I'm
I
telling
would
you,
have
I'd
been
try
like,
it if you had it.
absolutely
Oh.
not. Let's.
I mean,
let's
I would
not
try
release
it,
this
but
beer.
hot dogs and Skittles, I'm out. So we used to call this segment 5 burning questions, but 6 burning questions sounds weird. So now we're just going to call it burning questions.
All right.
What's one thing when starting your business that you would change or do differently?
I would have fought more to start with larger equipment, because the first year was really hard. And the thing is, like, once you have the infrastructure in place for your equipment, it's a huge pain in the butt to change it as you grow.
Like, is it a different electric service or anything, or what's the...
We did have to upgrade our gas lines, because the new system pulled so much more. It's the glycol lines that keep all of the tanks regulated. We had to sell, the old chiller we had to buy a new one, because as you grow, and you're putting more liquid into tanks, it creates more thermal mass, and so you have to buy a bigger chiller in order to maintain temperatures on your tanks. So, I mean, it would have been so much better if we started, as big as I wanted to start. But at the same time, I learned a lot on, how to, make things happen even when you're at a disadvantage, or when, it teaches you how to get scrappy, like how do I produce this product even though, I don't have the necessarily proper equipment to do that. So, but I still wish, the first 2 years were really hard just because we were brewing 4 days a week, 3 batches a day into tanks as we were growing, and it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Number 2, what's your favorite hobby outside of brewing beer?
Big
Golf.
golfer. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Everybody's golf.
Yeah.
I briefly talked to him about golf, and then he mentioned golf earlier.
Yeah. So sometimes, I'm like, oh man, this is a great hobby. Sometimes I'm like, why do I torture myself?
Yeah.
But, I played golf all through high school, and I played a year in college, and it's just kind of my escape. There are very few times I'm not constantly checking my phone just because, did I get an email from someone? That's another thing about being an entrepreneur. Like, it's not a 9-to-5 job. I mean, I'll get phone calls at 9 o'clock at night on having to deal with a problem, or, at 2 o'clock in the morning that something's broken.
That's why I almost laughed when you said you get to make your own schedule. I was like, I bet this place is a ticking time bomb for questions. Like,
Yeah.
you know one's coming when you leave. You know it is.
But, you still get to, like I said, there's no boss waiting at the door at 8 o'clock in the morning going, you're 2 minutes late.
Right.
Do you
That's
have
me.
people? Do you have people working through the night to brew?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
No, not yet. And we're trying to expand without having to do that, just because I worked as a night shift. So before Mirror Twin opened, I brewed at 2 different breweries. I brewed at Alltech, and then I brewed at Blue Stallion.
That's awesome.
And I was a night shift brewer at Alltech, and I'm glad I did it because it definitely got my foot in the door in the industry, and it taught me a lot. But it was miserable working night shift, and I just don't want to have to put any employees through that.
So you've mentioned expansion a few times. Is that mainly equipment expansion, or do you all have plans to kind of expand the
Is there anything you
brewery
could
as a-
talk
yeah, Can we
about?
hint about anything?
So we are trying to expand our production. So the problem is right now, so you see these 2 buildings. We actually have a third building. We have a 6,000 square foot warehouse
Oh, really?
across the street.
Oh.
And so right now, it's most of our cold storage. We have a really big walk-in cooler over there. And it's also where we store like cans and grain and kegs, clean kegs, stuff like that. In the back where we're brewing now, we have no more room to add any more tanks. But that's really the only way we can produce more product. So the plan is to have some of these buildings down here in the block rezoned, because they have to be rezoned in order for us to move over there without having food. So right now that process is ongoing. And then to move all of the equipment over there, except for a couple tanks that we'll use for small batches, and buy either a bigger system or bigger tanks, and increase the amount of product we can produce. Because right now we're kind of capped out.
Yeah.
So, in turn, I really want to start opening up other locations. I want to increase our production so that we can get a little bit more in distribution, but also so we can open up other tap rooms and kind of feed those tap rooms with, a central location where I have a lot of control over the product. If you open up a lot of small locations and each location is brewing all the beer, I just think it's going to be really difficult for quality control.
Oh, for sure.
So, we're hoping in the first few months of next year, we can get that expansion finished and then start brewing a lot more product.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. What is your favorite restaurant? And don't say Rolling Oven. Local, please.
I would say it's a close tie between Carson's and Tony's.
It's funny how similar all these answers are. It's always Carson's is thrown in there, and it's always golf.
But I also say, so and Tony's is great, but you're going to spend a couple $100.
Yeah.
I love Carson's. Their food's amazing. Their service is always amazing. They're a little bit more reasonable. I would say the restaurant that I eat at the most, though, is Shamrock's.
Nice.
Wow.
So I love Shamrock's. Both locations, the people are always great. Their food's always on point, and they sell our beer, so I can't eat that too much either.
It's a nice little local staple.
What is your favorite musical artist that no one would expect you to listen to?
My guilty pleasure is Post Malone.
Hey.
And I do not look like a guy who likes some Post Malone.
I like that answer
First off, first I was like, oh, this guy's a mumble rapper. He has no talent. But then, you sit down and you listen to him, and you listen to a story.
It's cool.
Where, he kind of got picked up because his friends, threw some YouTube video on, and
right.
That's kind of how he got his start. But then you hear him do other things, he covered some Nirvana songs and all that, and you're like, wow, this guy's he's
a
not
musician.
He's a musician,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he's still humble about it, and that's what I like about him. But then I love 90s rock like Fuel and Dave Matthews Band. And
are you going to Railbird?
I will actually be out of town for Railbird.
Oh, you're gonna miss Dave.
I know.
Sorry about it.
I need to buy my tickets.
What is if you read books, what's your favorite business book?
I loved Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I don't know if it's necessarily a business book. I mean, I think it is, but
I think a lot of lessons could be tied to business.
I'm about to read it
for
again.
Sure.
Yeah.
I read it probably almost 10 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, I need to read it again.
And then another one of my favorites is Raising the Bar by John Tafford. Just that's a little bit more particular in my industry,
Right.
But I another guilty pleasure of mine. I really don't like reality TV, but his show Bar Rescue.
It's
Very
so
nice.
good.
I like it because first off, I realize it's totally over the top. There's no way he's going into those places without those people knowing and just being like,
And just
"You're
ripping
an idiot."
them a new one, yeah.
But there are a lot of lessons to be learned, and especially within the industry, and it's every day is a little bit of a battle. Cost control, making sure that you're not going through more product than necessary, making sure your employees aren't giving away free stuff. But not just that, because I trust my employees. I mean, trust but verify. We always inventory everything, but also making sure the cooler is a little bit warmer, so you're going to get more foam. And it's most people say, oh, that's no big deal. I'm the reverse. I'm like, we have to get this cooler fixed because that's 40 beers a day that are getting off-poured because of the foam issue.
Right.
And also people like cold beer.
Yeah.
So, keeping those coolers, that's kind of something that a lot of people don't think about. And let me tell you, we have 5 coolers. And here's another thing I've learned. If you have 5 coolers, at least one of them goes out every year.
Really?
And they are not cheap to replace.
I'd imagine not.
So
That's somehow just not surprising to me that would go down. It makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And there's so much maintenance that goes into all of these cooling units
Mm-hmm.
that you don't realize until, Another thing I'll say about being an entrepreneur is that you wear a lot of different hats, and you learn more about things. I knew nothing about electrical or HVAC stuff before we started, and then things break down every year. So you learn. I'm not saying I could vacuum down and find a leak in our system, but you do kind of learn okay, well, these are the things to look for. Can I fix it myself, or I can't? Well, who do I call? And that's another thing too. Everything's kind of an emergency situation when you have a cooler down, or
Especially with beer, yeah.
yeah. So that's definitely something I've learned is you wear a lot of different hats, and you have to be able to know how to fix things, and also you have to be able to know when to delegate those to a specialist.
Yeah. Last one, you brought it up. Post Malone and Bar Rescue are some guilty pleasures. Anything else crazy?
Is there one specific guilty pleasure you have?
Matt does crochet lessons on Tuesday nights. That's one of his.
It wouldn't surprise me if you knitted.
No, I've tried it.
You fuck with knitting, don't you?
Yeah, I watched a video on it one time. I was like,
I'm trying to think. when I do have downtime, I mindlessly scroll through Facebook and Instagram and just watch. I will go down the rabbit hole of videos where it's like, you know, either golf videos or brewing videos or stuff like that, where, you know, you just, I don't even have an interest in this, and I'm watching this 14-minute video. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I should be going to bed. Ooh, another golf video.
I wish I could do that, but my Facebook got deleted this morning by hackers. So.
Oh, man.
I did have one thing I meant to ask you. What is your favorite beer?
Good question.
It's a great question. I think it's evolved over time. You know, our brown ale was one of my favorite beers because when I first started, you know, that was my favorite style, and that's evolved over time. But, you know, also, first off, I'll make the joke, you know, they're all like my children.
Yeah.
And I can't name my favorite.
I love
It's
them
this
all.
one.
Yeah.
But it also like changes seasonally. So I've developed a really strong love for the New England IPAs. And so I love the new ones that we come out with when we're using, like last Friday we made a cryo version of our Hazy But Lazy. So cryo hops just came out on the market a couple years ago, and they're just starting to trickle down to like smaller breweries because they're getting more available. So they're packaged using liquid nitrogen, so their flavor's a lot more concentrated, and you don't get a lot of the like plant matter, so you get a lot more flavor without having to use as much.
Oh, that's nice.
So our yields are better. You don't get a lot of hop burn because, you know, you don't have all this leafy, you know, hop debris floating around the beer, and you get this really strong flavor. So anytime, you know, we come up with a new hazy, I really love trying that. And then I love the fruited sours a lot too, especially on hot days. But I'll say that the beer that I'm the most proud of is, you know, either our Blonde Ale White Girl Wasted or our Grindstone Pills.
Ooh, I like that one.
Because I always tell people this, you know, especially people in the brewing industry kind of joke that, oh, you know, people throw all these adjuncts in beer to hide flaws. That's not necessarily true. You know, it's really, we make it, it's because we've realized it's what people want. But if you really want to see the skill of a brewer, go and find their lightest beer and see what it tastes like. Does it have any off flavors? Is it clean? Is it crisp? Because in light beers like that, there's nowhere to hide any flaws. And, you know, there's a lot of skill that goes into making those beers really clean and really consistent. So that's why I would say those beers are my favorite, or I'm sorry, those beers are what I take the most pride in, because it really takes a lot of attention to detail, batch to batch, to make them consistently.
I would have never thought that, but that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it does.
Huh. Well, thanks for your time, man. It's I've learned a ton, and I can tell that you're passionate about this business. That it's written all over the place in you. So
Yeah, you're doing an awesome job. It's been cool. Like I said, I was at the grand opening, so it's been amazing watching how you've grown, and you're doing a hell of a job, man.
I appreciate it. You know, I feel very fortunate that I get to do something I love every day. And, you know, that's not to say it isn't work, because there are times where, you know, you're losing hair because things are breaking. I was joking with my brewers the other day. It's like every week for the last 2 months, something has broke. Every week. And we were joking that, can we just have 1 week, just one, where something doesn't break?
Well, if you keep it up, everything will be new.
that's true.
Well, yeah, but the new stuff breaks just as much as the old stuff.
Except for the 52-week-old, light bulb.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I guess maybe I'm gonna sneak over to the other side and grab a beer.
Yeah.
What date? September 30th.
September 30th is our actual.
Damn it.
But don't.
I'll be out of town.
Which date? Which date is the actual
So
grand
we're-
opening?
so-
though?
so-
that weekend.
Yeah, September 30th
So
is the actual day we opened up
first,
5 years
second?
ago.
October 2nd.
But we're going to do an event every day of the week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's
I'll
going to be
be
fun.
here. Yeah.
And
I'll
we're going to
FaceTime
do
Matt.
we're doing a ton of new releases. We're doing, you know, the Mirror Monday stuff. We're doing my assistant brewer Doug has this like experimental fermenter that we use. It's like a little 20-gallon fermenter. He's going to do like 5 or 6 different releases on Tuesday. Wednesday we've got a a American stout aged in bourbon barrels with coffee.
Ooh.
On Thursday, we're doing a clear the fridge sale. Friday, we're releasing 5 new sour reflections, which is our fruited slushy sour series. And then Saturday,
You gotta save me some cans or something if you can.
I'm sure we'll have some left because we're gonna make a decent amount of each. And then Saturday we're gonna do Hazy Birthday 5, which is Hazy Birthday has 4 different hops in it, one for each year that we were a business. So now Hazy Birthday 5 is gonna have 5 different hops. They're gonna be all the same, except we're gonna add a hop called Vic's Secret, which is this really good Australian hop, very citrusy, very juicy. And then we're also going to do our Chernobyl release. So we're going to have our base Chernobyl and then 4 variants, one for each brewer.
That's awesome.
Golly.
How many different types of hops are there?
Over 200.
Oh, so you can go for a while.
Yeah.
Damn.
With your birthdays.
I'm excited about this. I want to speed time up and get to that date.
I may cancel
Cool.
my trip, so. I'm joking.
Dang it. He said something I had a question about. But, yeah,
Whatever.
I feel good about it.
But I do appreciate you guys having me on. I love getting to do this stuff and talk about, something I'm really passionate about. And, I want to say that we'll never not be appreciative of, our customers, because without people coming in here to enjoy the beer, we don't exist. And, my promise is that we're always going to, try to do what's best for our community, stay involved in our community. We really like to give back. We donate to a lot of different charities. We try to do a lot of different events that help support the community. And, we're always going to put the quality of our product first and always make sure that it's always getting better and, as consistent as we possibly can keep it, because we know that's what's important.
I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't. I was fangirling for this one. Like, brewery's always been my favorite thing to go to, and I don't know. When we started this podcast, I didn't really think we'd get to do. I don't know. It was put in my head, but this is awesome.
Doubter. Can't doubt yourself. You just gotta shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming on, man. We really appreciate it, and we're very excited to be your neighbor. So.
All right. Yeah, we're excited.
Hell
Awesome.
yeah.
Peace, guys.
This is the Building Small Business Podcast. I'm Matt.
I forgot
That's
to send
Shay.
this off. This is Shay.
Bye.
And I'm not so strong, I'm falling apart. And like the door handle in my old car, my getting fixed will just remain